So, a frequent question that I get from serious seekers who are dealing with self inquiry and surrender is, am I doing this right? There are inevitably phases for most seekers when they're dealing with these practices to wonder whether is this what it's supposed to feel like? Am I doing it correctly or incorrectly, or what's going on, basically? And and this goes along with feeling like in inquiry, for example, you're at a dead end, you don't know where to turn, you don't know how to go further. Or in surrender, are you really ignoring all thought, or are you just thinking you're ignoring all thought? Are you really relaxing? Is this relaxing? Is that relaxing? Is that relaxing? Is that effort? Is this effort? Is this my effort? And on and on and on. And what does it really mean? What do these things really mean? And I have a few different responses to these things. The first and most important thing to realize is that confusion is a necessary and important part of these practices. These practices only appear to be practices. They are, in fact, pointers to your true nature. So, though we pretend like there's an action that you're doing called inquiry or surrender, in the end, what is going to be revealed is that this is not an action at all, but it's something that has been ongoing. It seems like there's a thing that I do called inquiry that I sometimes do, I sometimes don't do, I do it better sometimes, I do it worse sometimes. This is misleading, actually. We have this provisionally, right? We use this, for seekers for a while. But in the back of your mind, you should recognize, you should keep in the back of your mind the fact that this is in fact not actually the case. And so there is a kind of inherent trick involved. Doing inquiry and surrender as a practice is a kind of trick to get you to see that they aren't actually a practice in the end. And so the confusion that you have about whether you're doing right or not is quite legitimate, because if you really are doing it, when you really do it, you will recognize that there's no such thing as doing it, because you are it. You are the movement of the mind towards inquiry. You are the movement of the mind away from thought. Per surrender, you are inquiry. Therefore, there's no such thing as doing surrender or inquiry in the final analysis. So it is confusing because you're being asked to do what you already are, which really, if you think about it, makes no sense. So of course you're confused. The confusion is correct. And the task of the seeker, in a primary sense, is to allow this confusion to be and to keep trying, to keep struggling. Live in that confusion, be in that uncertainty. That's okay. Keep trying. Because in some profound sense, these practices are not normal practices, not like going to the gym and building your muscles. I mean, there's an element which has some small piece of that, but it's mainly something which is trying to break your mind in some sense, take you out of your common sense intuitions, take you out of your usual assumptions about the world and about the way things work. And fundamentally, that's going to include the practice itself. What is the practice? The practice changes. Your notion of the practice changes. Your relationship to the practice changes over time. That's the point of these particular practices. They aren't like just focusing on a static object. They teach you what they are as you do them. They clarify. They're like a kind of thing which opens up. It's like there's an analogy of these old Japanese paper toys that you would put in water and they would unfold into different shapes, ships, flowers, all kinds of things. It starts out as a piece of paper, but immersed in the fluid of water, it expands and unfolds. And in the same way, inquiry or surrender appears like this very, straightforward thing, but immersed in the fluid of your attention and effort, it unfolds into something which you didn't anticipate. So that's another important thing. So one is confusion, important part of the process. Live in that confusion. Be okay with the uncertainty and struggle and struggle. Try to understand. Nothing wrong with trying to understand. As you break your head against it, the aim is that your head will be broken and that something new will result. You should be trying. And it's okay. The fact that you feel confused is a sign, in a way, of your engagement. At the same time, note that your engagement with it will, of itself, teach you. There is an inner process of being taught by the technique itself. What the technique is. That it is not ultimately a technique is itself the final lesson of that technique. That it's not a technique, that is your nature. And the final thing I'll say about this, which is also important, is the basic reason you don't have clarity is, and I say this to all my students all the time, is attachments. And when I say attachments, what do I mean by that? I mean those things in the world that you care about. It could be things that you care about losing, loved ones, money, reputation. It could be things that you care about gaining, like you want pleasure of various kinds. I mean, it's also connected to all those things I just said, pleasure, pain, desire, fear, anything where you care about the result. So you're caring about the result, and you're caring about it in a way that implies that you have to put your attention and effort towards it. Those projects, and it could be very simple things, it could be complicated things, it could be as simple as a piece of chocolate and your desire to enjoy that piece of chocolate. It could be as complicated as making sure your career goes well, or something like that, or protecting your health, or whatever, making sure your kids grow up in a certain kind of way. These projects basically reinforce your identity as a person and are reinforced by that identity. And to them, this investigation into the self through inquiry or surrender puts them in jeopardy. At least that's the way, quote unquote, they feel about it. From your identity as a person, the sense that all my projects might be illusory in some sense, and my idea that I am in control, that I can, through my effort, influence things, I can, through my effort, decide things, that I have a stake, have a power, all these things, right? Me, what feels like me, that what feels like me has that power, and therefore has the responsibility to be engaged, right? All those things are in some sense threatened when the possibility of a completely different perspective is presented. So this is why, right, it's so important for most people to try to engage in inquiry or surrender at every waking moment. Now, I know that's, initially impossible, and, in a way, getting there is the end of the process, but at least the attempt ought to be made, because as you attempt inquiry or surrender during your daily activities, these attachments arise. They arise as pulls on your attention. Or like, okay, inquiry or surrender later, I have to deal with this now. I have to drive. If I don't pay attention to my driving, I'm going to get into a car accident. I have to talk to this person. If I don't pay attention and be in the conversation and focus my energies on the conversation, then I'm going to look like an idiot, or I'm going to seem like I'm rude, or I'm not listening, or my boss is going to think less of me, or any number of things, right? So those things which feel like you can't engage in inquiry or surrender because you need that attention to do the thing. You need to do the thing. That reinforces your identity, right? If you submit to the engagement, and if you are able to successfully pull your attention away towards inquiry or surrender, then it weakens your identity. Identity is based on the attachments, and the attachments are based on the identity. These are related, linked, right? Who I am as a person dictates what I find important and pleasurable and what I want to avoid, and those things in turn, reinforce the sense of being a person. As I pursue those things, it's like, yeah, of course, yeah, this is me. This is the story I'm telling about who I am, what I value, what I care about, what I don't care about. Anyway, that whole structure is threatened by the possible revelation that it is not what it seems to be at all, and that all the things that are in that, both good and bad, are superficial in some way. That becomes threatening. That becomes like disorienting, unfamiliar, alien, could feel scary, could feel threatening, could feel all kinds of things. So that sits inside the seeker and prevents them from penetrating the final puzzle. When you do inquiry and surrender, you don't go beyond a certain point because there's a part of you that does not want to go beyond that point. Because there's a sense that if I go beyond this point, who knows what it will do to all the things I care about. But of course, the rejoinder from the spiritual standpoint is, who is it that cares about these things? Are you sure that you're the one who's affected by these things? But then again, from that earlier point of view, the common sense point of view, it's like that very thinking is dangerous. I can't think along those lines, because if I think along those lines, it's going to demotivate me. I need my motivation. I need to protect the things I care about. But who's protecting the things I care about? Again, that's the spiritual point of view. So this is a kind of clash between the points of view. So the clarity that you lack in inquiry or surrender, the dead ends, the impasses that you get to, are because you do not want to see beyond them. At least a part of you doesn't. You're conflicted. And the only way to get past that conflict, basically, is the continued practice. As the practice whittles away at the attachments, and the way it does that is, as the thoughts arise in the moment that try to drag you away into them, they're like, pay attention to me, work with me, engage with me, do things with me, take me to be truth, and you are successfully subjecting those thoughts to inquiry or surrender, and therefore enjoying a measure of peace, inner peace, instead of peace derived from the outside, the mind slowly inverts, so to say. It introverts. It derives more and more and more from the inward, less and less and less from the outward, therefore weakening the attachments, therefore weakening the fear of penetrating beyond that identity. And that's also, in a different way, how therapy and things like that, they also have their influences on this effect. But the sort of tip of the spear on the attachments is obviously the spiritual search. But if you're getting frustrated, you should recognize who your real enemies are, and they are the attachments. And if you want more clarity now, the way to do that is determine to use that frustration to more clearly guard against the disruptions to the continuity of the practice, right? Because there are going to be things that you're going to feel like, I need to do this. I'm scared of not doing it. I'm scared of not paying attention while I'm driving. I could die, and I could get maimed, right? These are all ideas that the question is, who's driving really, though? Are you driving? Really? Where are you? Who are you? Are you going to be the one affected by an accident? Who are you exactly? Who are you, right? So, and again, the fear-based self says, I don't have time for these questions. I need to drive. I need to focus on driving. So again, that's the clash. When you are sufficiently frustrated, you can pour that frustration into saying, to hell with everything else, right? This is, in a way, the goal of the practice, to get the desire and the frustration to that boiling point where it says, as it's said in different contexts and different mystical traditions, when you want it as much as a drowning person wants air. They think of nothing else. They don't care about anything else, in that moment. Then the doors will open. The doors to clarity will open. So the confusion is ultimately because of a internal conflict about wanting to see the truth. Do you want to see the truth? Do you actually want to see the truth? What if it destabilized what you normally thought of as reality, right? Which it will, actually. But, it's well worth it, nevertheless, is the truth. Because what is precious in what you currently see as reality will be preserved in a deeper, more profound way. You will have to give up something, but you will get something infinitely more valuable.